Good evening. My name is Dr. Craig Gill, and I graduated from chiropractic school in 1994, and I've been in practice for 26 years. My history with chiropractic began in 1950 with my father, who was being treated for migraine headaches. His chiropractor at the time was able to resolve his headaches, which naturally built a high level of trust from my parents towards the chiropractic profession. In 1968, at the age of 2 weeks old, I was diagnosed with a periumbilical infection. Naturally, my parents' trust in this doctor, they took me to him to get his professional opinion. He suggested an alternative approach with a topical ointment that resolved the condition within a matter of a week. From that point on, my family has always sought out alternative care for their health issues, finding replacements for such things as antibiotics, steroids, and vaccines. Yes, I am proud to say I have never been vaccinated. Therefore, because of my experience, curiosity, and push from my sister and my mother, I went to school to become a chiropractic physician. A year into practice, I started to hear the name Tent. Do you know Dr. Tent? Do you follow Dr. Tent? Have you met Dr. Tent? At first, I was amazed, envious, and probably a little bit jealous. Who wouldn't want that kind of success with patients? Several years later, I sat next to a doctor in the back of a seminar, and he looked like he didn't want anybody to sit next to him. I sat next to him anyways. We slowly began to talk about patients and conditions we have seen in our offices, as well as sharing different therapeutic protocols that we had success with. I realized this dude was brilliant and had a lot of interesting knowledge, and I needed to get to know him better. It wasn't until he leaned over and said to me, "By the way, my name is Randy Tent," that I realized it was him, my unknown mentor. We have been saving seats for each other in the back of seminars ever since that time, which has been about 10 years. Dr. Tent's ability to reduce down the most complex conditions would leave many to think, why didn't I think of that? He has pushed the chiropractic field with his highly effective practice skills and teaching to where it should be today. It was once said, all cures for man exist in nature. It just takes a good scientist to find them. Dr. Tent is that scientist. It is my honor and privilege to introduce my mentor, my colleague, and my friend, Dr. Randy Tent.
I'm not quite sure who he's talking about, but apparently it was supposed to be me. My notes. I want to thank Dr. Gill because I have had a blast taking his seminars for biotics. I've learned a lot about blood chemistry from him. I always said to him, you know, the three of us could make an incredible team one day, and you never know what's going to happen. He's a man that I have admired because he is a warrior for natural health. And I highly respect him because he could go into that hospital right now and he'd sort some stuff out for me. And I forgot my notes and Amy just gave them to me. I was taken aback by that introduction. Now, well, this is a whole new venue for all of us because I kind of miss all you people out there, but obviously I'm staring at a camera in a waiting room behind Quarantine Center in Michigan. All right, some simple stuff I got to go through. What is the most underutilized therapy in America? And there might be that and some special guest things going on in August. This will be a very special lecture. Stay tuned to the venue. Jeff is having a blast with his meters and running around checking EMFs everywhere. He's all excited to work with EMFs, electricity, and your health. He's been driving around. He'll have some very interesting things to share with you on that. In the middle of this weird crisis, today we had a lot of video appointments, and a lot of people are going to that, and we've had a blast using virtual video appointments, and they work very successful. We have a blast, and we're helping people all over the world. Shipping, we'll talk to you over Skype easily. Please find us on Instagram. We put stuff out there to kind of teach the next generation how to do some things. Like us on Facebook. Make it easy on us. Subscribe on YouTube. The kids know how to do all that stuff. Help your parents if you have to. Obviously, today, the elephant in the room has to be addressed first because we're all sitting here with a world that has changed in about 2 weeks. Now, it's a very emotionally charged topic. It's split apart families, churches, businesses, friendships. So I want to make a couple comments about this without riling up the crowd. For the last 3.5 years, I had a number of patients that enjoyed with their smugness how they understood it's been fake news for a long time. It was always fake news. All of a sudden, 2 weeks ago, they started telling us the truth. Just all the blue. Now, in my life, I got to ask you a couple questions. Was the JFK thing real? Was the 9/11 thing real? We all thought it was. Looking back, that was suspicious. How about Shanksville, Pennsylvania? Was that real? How about the Pentagon? Was that real? The bird flu, the swine flu, Building 7, HIV. Everybody was supposed to have a member of their family with AIDS right now, living in a quarantine room. That's what they told us 30 years ago. And the impact, that was a $1 trillion pile of baloney. No one has AIDS people living in their house. We're supposed to all have that. Was Vietnam real? Was the mercury being safe in your mouth real? Was fluoride real? Was the tooth fairy real? I've been through so many things in my life that I thought were real. They just weren't real. So I'd like to talk about this in August, because in August, we're going to have a chance to look back like we did on so many things. And every time we look back, we find out it's just not real. So let me tell you what the patients did. Cornered here. This is what 85% of my patients did today over the last couple of weeks. They came in and it was just about, I'm going to act the best I can like them. So I walked in the room, oh, Dr. Tent, how do you like this virus stuff? You know, what a joke. This is really a scam. I can't believe they're doing this. What do you think? And the moment they said, what do you think, they were owned before they opened their mouth. Now, about 10% or less of my patients walked in and said, I can't believe what's going on. How could they possibly get away with this? I had a Polish lady today. Renata, this is for you. She said, I came from a system of quarantines, border checks, and fines. You people don't know where you're going, and you better be awful scared. My European patients are terrified of what's going on right now, while we're all dancing on the balconies acting like this is fun. It's not fun. Now, I don't know how you're handling the quarantine personally, but let's discuss this. One of the most important things to overhaul your brain for a cognoscopy. Number one, in my family, there's major circulation issues. Where's the laser thing work? Good. Circulation, thyroid, saturated fat versus old fat, traumatic brain injury, hardening of the arteries, calcification. Where did all that come from? Spring water, well water, Evian, Perrier, calcium carbonate, oyster shell, eggshell. People have calcified themselves, taking calcium that you can't eat. I've watched my relatives up north calcify themselves, thinking they had strong teeth, and they're full of kidney stones, arthritis everywhere. Pharmaceutical mischief. We're going to cover that. Inflammation, long-term stress, toxic relationships, malnutrition, starvation, Wi-Fi, prenatal nutrition, a viral load. We're going to cover that around Christmas. We got a special lecture on viruses, digestion, heavy metals, and type 3 diabetes. I don't know if you noticed, but there's some people sitting around in quarantine right now that have been in quarantine a little too long. And Gertrude was knitting a special scarf for her husband after a couple of weeks in quarantine. That made me laugh because I think a lot of people are starting to feel like that about now. All the medications on that list will put your brain to sleep. And the patients that love to take Advil with this coronavirus thing flared it up like crazy. It was a gigantic mistake. Now, I've been able to get away with eating restaurant food most of my life, all my life basically. My wife's busy, I'm busy. To try to keep your brain functioning today, one of the clearest things to do, which nobody takes seriously, is what? Let me ask you guys, what do you think? This is me. To eat trans fats, hydrogenated rancid fats most of my life at the restaurants. I had a whole pile of these to pass out to the crowd as a gift from Standard Process, but we don't have them now because we're in quarantine. This is my numbers for the fats in my body. I've been able to keep these things in range, it's my name, in range, eating the wrong fats and oils all the time. It's not fun. Nobody's interested in fats and oils, but to take my oils every single day, sometimes they give me heartburn, sometimes they bother my gallbladder, sometimes they irritate my stomach, but it's kept me looking like this at the age that you just found out on that number because my birth date's there. So people that have no fats and oils look like John McCain. That low-fat diet has polluted people's brains. So to eat junky oils all day and still have my membranes, I had to take a lot of good oils to offset the bad oils, and that is how it works. And your brain, that's probably one of the most important things you can do is saturated fat. And what did they tell you to do for the last 30 years? Don't eat saturated fat. Was that true? Another one. There's me. I stayed awful close to where I'm supposed to be, and that is the key part to making my brain be alive and my skin not to look dead. All those things are great to eat. I don't eat one of those things. I don't like any of that stuff. Half of it's so tainted. You're going to find out how tainted it really is in just a minute. So the food, you eat those foods on that list to try to keep your fats and oils up, you will probably poison yourself before your brain's happy, and I'll prove that to you in a second. Today, you don't want to get stuck on a particular oil. I like to mix up my oils. I like to take quality companies, intelligent saturated fat, things like this. I can jockey, kids can get the liquid down. I like this other end. I play these oils all the time. I don't take all those, but I juggle those in my system because I don't want to get used to any one thing, and it makes my body handle the toxic restaurant food quite successfully. This is a follow-up to the famous Gabe story of a couple months ago. To have this strapping 23-year-old man come in and talk about memory loss, confusion, and brain fog out of the blue. 1 can of tuna fish for 5 months. 2 to 3 months into this, his brain was going south from the tuna fish. We stopped the tuna fish. We've been doing some gentle chelation. He's a brand new kid. How much did your life change just getting the mercury out of your diet?
It was just incredible. Big drastic change. Like, I felt like I had a new brain. I felt like I was back to my old self, and it was amazing.
This is an epidemic. You're feeding your kids stuff that's so full of heavy metals. Memory loss, confusion, 23, had to be his diet. Just stopping this and the gentle supplements that he's been taking, he has his first test in college and he's all excited to go at it with a new brain. He's helping the world understand what's been done to our thinking processes. I really appreciate this story. Thank you very much. This kid, 23 years old, brain fog, fatigue, memory loss. I go into the room to get the things that I took today to come in front of you. I got my little routine to make my frontal cortex work, which I'll share with you later. And I'm picking up those things, walking back to the room, and not in an audible way, but the good Lord says, this is stupid. You got to do better than this on this kid. All right, this is stupid. There's no way a 23-year-old talks like this. So I walked in, and by the grace of God only, I asked him one question. How much tuna fish do you eat? He looked at me and he said, I can't believe you said that. I've been eating 1 can a day for whatever, for the last 3 or 4 months, and in 2 months, how long? 5 months. 2.5 months into this, he was lost in space. Now, the first test that he took, after he chelated himself, I remember he got 103 out of 104 on his college test after chelation. My point was how simple that destroyed his brain. The results have been staggering. Now I'm here to tell you guys, I got lots of stuff on the horizon with seafood. When it's orally ingested, his response was so quick. When it's injected in your body, it's a whole different battle to chelate that out of your body. Stopping eating it, gently pushing it out, he had overwhelming results in a very short period of time. He chelated it quickly. Absorbing it this way is much different than having it put into your bloodstream. It's a whole new ball game. This is one of my shrimp users. 42 years old. You talk about confused in the room. She was confused. Hair's falling out. She was a mess. Loss of balance, hair loss. She looked like she had Parkinson's. Huh, interesting. Where'd that come from? I don't know, but that's what it looked like. Call it what you want. My life is kind of interesting because every time I get to do a lecture, they killed another one of my friends. I lost another one. Did you know that we found out in the year 2019 that your brain has an immune system? Oh my gosh, it actually can get sick. Isn't that crazy? Listen to this. This is the famous Tom Taylor, and I'm doing a special story for Mike. Tom's been a patient for a good 20 years now.
Yep.
Tom came in about 7, 8 years ago, straight from the hospital. Tell him what happened.
Went into the hospital with a headache, and they
How bad was the headache?
It was bad, and I could just almost start crying. It hurt so bad. Finally, I went to the emergency room, and they sat me down, and then they couldn't figure it out, and then they gave me an epidural.
Spinal tap.
And then they find out I had meningitis.
Viral meningitis.
Viral meningitis, and said there was nothing they could do for it. Just kept giving me antibiotic or solution or
IV.
And then
No antibiotics.
no antibiotics.
Just send him home.
Sent me home. So I come to see you, and you give me some stuff. And I couldn't lay down. You told me to sleep in a chair, sitting up, and it just finally went away.
When he walked in that day, straight from the emergency room, with the confirmed viral meningitis, my friend Mike walked into a hospital with that down in Ohio. His story's after this. Thank you so much for that story. What hospital were you in?
Beaumont.
This is a real diagnosis. That's what a real hospital does. It plays it properly. I want to do a shout out to Beaumont. They played it properly. It's a great hospital. I use it all the time. That's how you play it. Spinal tap, there's nothing for viral meningitis. It's the headache from hell. Go home and see what you can do. So my point is, my friend, let's discuss my friend. There's bacteria in your brain. There's bacteria in your brain that's the same bacteria in your gut. You actually have bacteria in your brain. They didn't think you had anything, and they thought it was a sterile environment. Oh my gosh. I know me and Dr. Gill, how many viral headaches have you and I seen in a combined 60 years of practice? Uncountable. So let's go into an adventure. You ready to have an adventure? Because I lived this adventure. Mike, he's 1 year older than me. Mike was down at work in Ohio, and he got Tom's headache. It was Tom's headache. The worst headache of his life. We've seen it a million times, so he goes into I'll let the hospital, I know the name, but I'm going to keep it down. It's in Ohio. He walked in, and the guy said, I think you're having a stroke. So they did a radioactive dye study. I saw the results. They were perfectly normal. He said, my head still hurts. They said, well, you need another radioactive dye study. They did a second radioactive dye study. After the second one, what do you think he said? My head still hurts. So what do you think they said? We're going to do another radioactive. This is in the same afternoon. They did 3 radioactive dye studies in 5 hours. In the middle of the last one, he collapsed in a pile, went down in a pile, massive stroke on the left side of his body, and all the CAT scans were clean until the last one when they caused it. I went to visit him with this headache. This is what it's like to get Mike up. All he had was a headache. This is my friend Mike and his wife. This is what happens after 3 CAT scans for a headache, and he still has the headache. He still has the headache. Well, it took her about 25 minutes to get him up. So, after his massive stroke, then they come up to the VA hospital here. The VA hospital says, oh my gosh, I think this is a fungus. So they put him on vancomycin, omeprazole, 2 fungus generators, and Flagyl. Then they took him to the university hospital and they said, oh my gosh, you need fluids. So they put a bunch of fluids into his arm for no reason whatsoever. The next day I walked in, has a hose hanging out of his head. They filled up his brain full of fluid. I didn't take a picture of the hose hanging out of his head because I couldn't believe what I was looking at. So that water's going in here, they're pulling water out of his head. Then they said, we think he has a fungus. Then they said, we think, well, it's taken about 25 minutes to get Mike up after the doctors helped him out with a headache. I have pretty much no, Craig, you're one of my last friends left, sorry. I don't know what's next. Then I take his wife down for some food because she's all distraught. She just lost her husband for a headache. There in the university hospital, the only thing they had was chemical pop. Do you have any sugar here? Can you give me some good old-fashioned sugar? Nope. Everything was NutraSweet, something, it was just crazy. So we buried Mike. He's 1 year older than me. His wife asked me to lay out the story. There's the story. He was a great guy, and man, seeing him again will be nice because he didn't deserve what he got into. Let's talk about the men today. Let's talk about the men a little bit. If you spent your youth partying, emotion, fear, and anxiety follows the drinkers as teenagers. Emotion, fear, and anxiety. I was getting gas today, and all the men in their 20s and 30s were gloved up, masked up. They were getting gas in hazmat suits at Myers. I felt kind of a little uncomfortable knowing that maybe the emotion, fear, and anxiety, I've never seen such a scared group of men in my life. And I want you men, when you say, oh, he's being rude. Really? I want you to go watch the first 20 minutes of Saving Private Ryan. That's what your grandpa did. If you can make it through the first 20 minutes, good luck, because they were a lot tougher than we are. Alcohol. Alcohol loves to promote serotonin. Alcohol. Dopamine. What's dopamine? Everybody wants more dopamine because it's the motivator, reward and pleasure. What happened to our dopamine? I'm going to get to that. What happened to our dopamine? How come nobody's happy today? How come everybody's miserable today? I can't believe the sour moods that are going on today, and so many of us, something happened, and we're going to get into that. That's what this is about. Dopamine gives you reward or pleasure and motivation. Alcohol can release dopamine. I'm going to give you a secret for you men or women. I'm not going to get into the science of this. You take your serious alcoholics and put them on 3 blackcurrant seed 3 times a day, you will change their craving for alcohol inside their brain. And I've done it. I've watched it work so well, I couldn't believe when an alcoholic said, I wanted to do a shot of whiskey, and I couldn't do it because my body wouldn't accept it. Blackcurrant seed oil. Amazing. Is inflammation a factor? If you got inflammation in your body, your brain will follow that. So if you got inflammation in your body, a tip for all of us, this ingredient makes that work real well. So for all you veteran patients, if you want to get something across the brain barrier, and Joe, we talked about that with you. I know he's watching that out there. He's got some problems in the brain. That can get into the brain and cool things off. Make a habit for you veteran patients of using that supplement. I keep that in my body because it cuts phone lines to things that you don't want growing in your body. It's huge. I have zero interest. My sore throats and earaches and allergies were so misplayed in my youth, I can't imagine the next step. I don't know if you get really sick, what happens next? Do I get to do the mic thing? I'm not doing the mic thing. And the forced vaccine thing, we're going to get to Mr. Gates in a little while also. Turmeric can cross the blood barrier to help lower brain inflammation. Lower systemic inflammation, very simple stuff. It gets into your head. Improves your memory, Alzheimer's, modulate pain, controls blood sugar. It's really exciting because turmeric kills cancer stem cells by leaving your natural stem cells unharmed. Simple stuff for your brain. Now, I don't know if a lot of people trapped at home right now. I made a couple of suggestions because I think a lot of folks have fallen into this quarantine thing. If I'm sitting at home, I can have a day kind of like this if I don't watch myself. I have to keep my blood sugar under control. Because you guys are going to, I don't know how much weight you're going to gain in the next month, but you're going to gain weight in the next month. So if this happens to be your life, and when I'm home, this kind of happens to be some of my life. For me, those two, I've rotated that. I'll go to a bottle of that. I'll do those two. Those two are for the people that are more pear-shaped, have more troubles than they're stuck. But this combination, I love keeping my sugar in control, and I've done very well with my diet, keeping my hemoglobin A1C. And there's a very important point for keeping your sugar under control, and what is it? The diet that works with diabetics. You have copies of that in the office. If your hemoglobin A1C is between 3 and 4, your brain increases in volume. If your hemoglobin A1C is between 5 and 7, your brain starts to shrink. Your brain shrinks when your sugar's up. You don't want your brain to shrink because the TV will scare you. And I would tell all the folks, after 40 years of lectures, the way the patients have played this infection, ones I thought were stronger. But I'll leave some of them out because I can't believe what I just witnessed on the seasonal flu. Did you ever shut everything off and listen to what the tapes in your head? Is that scary? Melissa, is that scary? What tape's going through your head? The Wizard of Oz. What about you? Shut the radio off, shut your stuff off, drive down the road, listen to what's going on in your head. Your brain has to have silence once in a while. Give it a rest. This is special. The stuff that Amazon was selling had lead and aluminum in it. And there's a lot of doctors watching this I want to say hello to. If your patients are watching these lectures, I want your patients to get their supplements from you. Support your doctors. We're getting killed out here by Jeff Bezos, Amazon, people that have no interest in your health. Look how they've treated Whole Foods. Support your doctors. Think small. Try to stay away from these big box stores because they're killing us all of us. And Amazon, Bezos does not care about you. You know, I'm burnt out on this topic, as all the doctors are, but the point is, in September 24 of 2019, a massive IQ decrease in males with fluoride. A massive IQ decrease in males with fluoride. JAMA, Pediatrics. The editors are stunned. 60 years of making people dull. And when you're dull, you'll fall for anything. And I'm watching it every day. Dull. This is disgusting. Massive IQ, massive drop. Oh boy, where did this come from? Unbelievable. And I have to use my Crest toothpaste. Of course you do. Fluoride deposits in the pineal gland. We're going to have some fun with the pineal gland. In my life, working on this so hard since I was about 19, so many of us that are on the ball today struggle with dullness. And I'm going to tell you, the men are getting hit really, really hard with dullness today. The women handle chemicals better. The men are getting creamed. What is that? Oops. Why does everybody have a pine cone on their head? Pine cones. What is that? Pine cone. It's that, and that is your pineal gland. When your pineal gland is calcified like that, I want to make a suggestion. When I lectured to the doctors, as did Dr. Gill, one of the questions I asked the doctors is, how well can you read the room? Every room's different. My last patient today, I'd love to tell you what was in his head. We had an interesting head pain. And I walked in, took one look in his eyes, and I saw fear in his eyes. Read the room. A lot of your intuitive skills, they believe, have a lot to do with your pineal gland. The more calcified, the more lame it gets, the more full of fluoride and chemicals it is. When you can start to see it on an MRI, you're getting pretty dull. So to stay sharp, the funny guy standing next to you that's crazy, all those intuitive moments that you have, there's a lot of things. Doctors generate skills that we have, intuitive skills that we've been blessed with because we did it honestly, and the good Lord helps give us ideas that make things work. Talking to us, this is a huge part of getting some ideas. We don't even understand the pineal gland, but it's a huge thing to look into because it controls so many things that we don't know anything about yet. So how well can you read the room? Berkeley said we're going to give credit for Pokemon, Marvel, and Hogwarts classes. So I know it's okay today. We're raising a generation of children, and they're off again for, we have Easter break and spring break and fall break and Christmas break, and we have Teachers' Work Day. 27 countries go year-round to school. 27 countries, 6 days a week, year-round to school. Your kids are playing games in the streets. They're going to get eaten alive with this future. It's not a future for Hogwarts and Pokemon. They're supposed to be growing up into being men. The dumbest generation has gotten dumber. I want to spend some time on the Common Core catastrophe that was pushed down our throats and the countries and people that were involved in it. But I'll just tell you, we're losing ground, and have everybody stay home forever and ever. And how long do they go to school this month? 4, 5, 6 months? That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They're not going to try to teach you much anyway. Now, I hate to do this to you. I'm not going to play that because there's a reason I'm sharing this with you. This is my father as he's laying dying. If I hit that video, the gurgling sound that he's making is so horrible, I was shocked when I went there. So we went there. He was dying. He died shortly after that. The sound is horrific. This is why you take care of yourself. You want to know why? I'm not playing the sound. We're there visiting him on his deathbed. My wife has a tendency to look behind the machine. The machine's not plugged in. They just threw the hose behind it. He was gurgling to death. He was getting charged for oxygen, and the machine, the hose wasn't plugged in at the back. He was gurgling to death, but he paid for that. So, Dad, you're not aware of that, but I shared how you got ripped off at the last time with the hose that was not hooked up to the machine. I would have never looked behind the machine. My wife looked behind the machine. She says, for Pete's sake, the hose isn't hooked up. Thank you, dear. You found it. Now, this is what my dad was on by the time the guys in the nursing home got a hold of him. Just a catastrophe. Now, my father, there's mental illness all over my family. For Pete's sakes, my uncle had a nervous breakdown. My dad had a busy brain, kids. So how many people got a crazy family out there? Did you realize it when you were young? When you get older, you look back and go, what a train wreck. It was a train wreck. I was able to find ways to make my brain work so I could go to school, go through all this training and stuff, and actually make something work. We had a lot of scattered brains in my family that didn't do well or gain traction well. Learn to make your brain work. That's what tonight's all about. Four of the most dangerous toxins to the brain, well, that was doctor related. Most of these have been doctor related. The doctors make sure you got plenty of heavy metals, lots of fluoride, no sugar. You got to do the artificial sweeteners and make sure you get plenty of MSG, and that's pretty much how it's been set up. Well, I've been off hockey for 8 weeks now from a shoulder injury, and you can't possibly bring any diseases into them disgusting locker rooms where I play hockey at. If the coronavirus went into the locker rooms I play in, I think it would be an upgrade to the stuff that's in there now. Just a personal observation. Fitness makes you work. I don't care, forget your pills, exercise. I'm a serious hockey player because of exercise. I could care less about hockey. It's an exercise I would never do on my own. This is huge. Now we're talking about your brain. This is huge. Seeds can retard and even reverse age-related decrements in motor and cognitive performance. You can turn things around, but in the literature, the amount of seeds you had to eat was like a pound a day in Russell Blaylock's great literature. The fruit was so intense, you'd be a diabetic by the time you improved your brain. So here, we're going to show you a little special shortcut. This is huge. Berries, look, this is huge. You need to learn how to make those work. And it's not the fruit, it's the seed. The power is in the seed. It crosses the brain barrier and can sharpen up your mind. I'm very fussy about making sure grape seed, blueberry seed, cranberry seed, red raspberry seed, my energy at my age is mitochondrially supported through that. That's one of the tips that I use, because I would not have this kind of energy with the food supply that's out there, because most people look like they've spent their energy. Now, let's get down to behavior. Now, this is going to be fun. Behaviors. What's your spouse like? What's your kids like? What's your parents like? I'm going to step on everybody's toes from this point forward, because there's very few people, in my opinion, that are really functioning human beings today because of weird parents, weird kids, weird upbringing. The doctors can tell you. Many times, Dr. Gill would tell you, I've walked out of the room with some messed up kids, and people think, what's wrong with the kid? Well, maybe it's the parents. Maybe it's the parents. We're all messed up. We all can use improvement. We've all been trained pretty much wrong. Let's cover a couple things that we're going to talk about. The deep limbic system is your bonding center and mood control. We're going to get into that. The moodiness and negative people can have problems in their deep limbic system. The basal ganglia controls how your brain idles. That's the idling speed. You can idle too fast, you can imagine what your car does. Idle too slow, you can't move along. The prefrontal cortex, that's where you think from. That's where you make your thoughts, your ideas, your empathy, your social distractions, whatever. That's your cognitive functioning. That's what sugar takes out. The cingulate, that shifts gears. You need to learn how to shift gears. You need to have a smooth interaction between your moods and emotions. The cingulate supports that. The temporal lobe, that's involved more with short fuse, with rage. People that are angry, people that can be negative, dark thoughts. You might find some depression in some of these holes in your brain. Now, to learn how to make this work, let's get after these things individually. There's a brain that's had 2 strokes. Now, that brain's probably not going to work that well. We know some famous people that have had a stroke lately, and they kind of missed something genetically that they could have caught. Alzheimer's. Now, I don't know how many supplements or what kind of nutrition or what kind of drugs are going to work on this brain. It's not. Start your brain now. You don't start working on it when you can't find your keys or you can't find anything. You got to start on your brain today, because nerves heal slow. Traumatic brain injury. How many people have hit their head? Your personality can change from head trauma easily. Drug abuse, opioids, holes in the brain. Now, you know, in my career, the despair in the men right now, I have never seen, and I don't think they understand what happened to them. What happened to most of the people out there today was when your cortisol went up, your testosterone went down, your estrogen went up, your insulin went up, all your hormones were suppressed. Men are depressed today. There's an agenda that has tanked our testosterone, raised our estrogen, and made us depressed. I'm watching kids that look like they're in male menopause young. Their testosterone levels are abysmal. Let's see how it affects them. Now, with all you doctors out there watching, this is where we're at today. The purple is where you want to be with your IQ. Where's the purple? China. Where's everybody else? This is the difference between this and this is a gigantic level of income. 95 to 105 is huge. Ask people that specialize in IQ. You want to be on that side. The world's been turned into a mediocre pile. And the person I want to talk about, you know, with all you doctors watching today, I'm kind of burned out on this Bill Gates guy and all the stuff going on. You had the test kits all prepared. You got the vaccine in the works. You know a little bit more about sneaky stuff behind the scenes, I think, than the rest of us do. So I'm kind of tired of Bill Gates telling me how I should live and I should get his vaccines that he's already mysteriously prepared for us somehow. The guy's like a genius to know that these things are going to happen before they happen. But I, for one, am going to cause a little resistance to the forced programs that they think we're looking forward to. I personally am not. Now, I had a sheet for all of you today that you're going to take home, but it might be contaminated, so we'll just show it to you right on the screen. There's 5 brain systems to check. 5. One is the deep limbic. Rage, dark thoughts, you're going to fill something out like that, and for the patients, and you guys get this easy. The basal ganglia. What's the basal ganglia like? Well, that's a whole different pile of fish to fry, which we're going to talk about, because I got this stuff all over. And the basal ganglia deals with nervousness and anxiety. The prefrontal cortex is where you think from, and you'll have a chance to go over these slowly and check out what you think is yours. Let's get after some specific parts of the brain to make sense of this. There's 4 main neurotransmitters. Many of you have heard of acetylcholine, serotonin, dopamine, and GABA. All those, this one makes you content, this one gives you reward and motivation, this one makes you relaxed, this one makes you remember things. Very simple. How's this? The front of the head, the back of the head, dopamine effects here, serotonin effects there, reward, motivation, pleasure, euphoria. It sounds good to have a lot of dopamine, doesn't it? Makes you happy. If you have too much dopamine, you'll go crazy. Here's serotonin, moods, memory, processing, sleep, cognition. There's major problems in most of our brains because of our diet and our digestion. Let's discuss the kids of today. How about this? If you talk to a group of kids today, and men, you're going to find a lot of people have no motivation. How do the kids today do with their motivation? How many of us had jobs when we were young? How many of your kids today, they couldn't find a job if they had to? No motivation, can't start or finish tasks, feeling hopeless or worthless, angered easily, unable to handle stress, wanting to get away from everyone, and you don't care about your family or your friends. Do you know anybody like that today? Half the people I know have lost a kid over this kind of stuff. And how did they get like this? What happened? I'm waiting. How do we lose this? Video games, sex, drugs, computers, Facebook, social media, gambling. When you want that drive to go after something, dopamine's firing. Once you get it, it's serotonin. When you continue to stimulate your brain, you will wear out your dopamine receptors, and then life starts to stink. A lot of people today are walking around with brains that are so compromised that it doesn't fire well. They're miserable, depressed, suicides are everywhere. And in a country this rich, we shouldn't feel like this. This is why. We've overstimulated ourselves till we're dead. Now, it takes you about a year to actually rebuild your brain to where you can start to enjoy life again. Dopamine affects the firing of the frontal lobe, which can affect goal setting, executive functions, planning and completing tasks. ADD's there. Antipsychotic meds block dopamine. So you want to keep your dopamine in a sweet spot so you can enjoy life and not hate everything and have to have constant stimulation to keep yourself motivated. The pathway to make dopamine runs straight down. There's all these very important neurotransmitters in that pathway. This is for the scientific people that kind of like this. Dopamine cannot cross the blood-brain barrier. All your amphetamines are raising dopamine. Cocaine, Adderall, all those things are dopamine, so you get addicted to dopamine being elevated. Your life's going to be ruined quickly. You need this to make TSH successfully. That's all involved with your thyroid, your gut. Patients with serotonin deficiencies. These are the people that are very wore out mentally. I had a lady today that told me with her wild life, she said, not a thing today, not a thing in my life could stimulate me because I've been through so much with so many. I have zero drive for anything or anybody. That was told to me today. Dead brains. And feeding your dopamine is foods like meat, eggs, cheese, oats, and chocolate. Anemia gets in the way. We're going to cover B6 in a little bit. Learn your B6. Birth control will suppress dopamine. People with hypochlorhydria. What percentage of the crowd do you think is hypochlorhydric, Dr. Gill? Oh, it's huge. Poor methylators are at risk for dopamine. Who are the poor methylators? Learn your homocysteine stuff, and that'll help. I'm going to show you some simple ways to promote dopamine. So this is more complicated stuff out of Dr. White's literature, which was excellent. What's serotonin? When you have no contentment. You've lost the things that you used to like, you don't like anymore. A lot of people are like that. You're overwhelmed with ideas. You got depression. You're paranoid more than usual. You lost the enjoyment of your life. And you perk up when the sun's out. I would like to be happy when the clouds are out, but it takes a little more energy to keep your moods up. Not enjoying your friendships or relationships. How many people are burned out on their friends and their relationships? It's a huge problem. Unprovoked anger, less enthusiasm in life in general, feeling more susceptible to pain. Serotonin. Now, I have to work on that. I work on a lot of things because I got to work with the public for 40 years. They wore me out a long time ago, but this is what I'm supposed to be doing, so I keep going. Serotonin is an epidemic. Serotonin starvation is a virtual epidemic in the U.S., with estimates of 80% of adults suffering from a serotonin starvation. It's so vital to your defense against anxiety and depression. Tryptophan is primarily found in high-protein foods. Vegetarians are at a much greater risk of serotonin depletion. Vegetarians got to work at keeping their moods up because in PubMed, the literature talks about they have a lot more problems with depression, anxiety, and other conditions that involve the mind. Keep your minerals up, keep your protein up. All these neurotransmitters are protein dependent. GABA, Valium, Xanax. Think about relaxing, you think about GABA. It helps you relax. Anxiety, irritability, restlessness, learn to play GABA, and we'll talk about that as we get going. Low GABA levels, panic or anxiety, feeling of dread. Most of my relatives ended up on Xanax or Valium because they had busy brains. They weren't played nutritionally, they were played chemically till it destroyed basically my family. Low GABA levels, tension, disorganized attention, the brain that can't stop. Promoting GABA. B6, we'll talk about that. It's about slowing down and cooling off the brain. Slow down and cool off the brain. T5P, the doctors will recognize that. Why is B? Now look at this. Histamine, dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline, hemoglobin, and GABA are just a few of the hormones that are dependent on B6. B6 makes your brain work. It makes the conversion of the fats and oils in your brain. It's huge. Please make your brain work better because the TV is throwing you for a curve. Functions, now here we go. This is the sugar cortex. This is very important because this is a huge part with lots of people. The prefrontal cortex, your attention span, your thinking, how you're critical, you're forward thinking, learning from empathy. How much empathy is out there today? Our prefrontal cortex has been destroyed from carbohydrates, stimulation, organization. These people have organizational issues, problem solving. Short attention span, distractibility, lack of perseverance, impulse control problems, hyperactivity, chronic lateness, emotional unavailable. This is huge today. Emotional unavailability, trouble learning from experience. The frontal cortex is getting hammered from the sugar and the sweets today. ADD you'll find in the prefrontal cortex. A dopamine deficiency you'll find there. Psychosis will demonstrate there when you have a dopamine excess. Head injuries will change your character. Learn to strengthen your frontal cortex. Tyrosine and protein do a great job on the frontal cortex. Pycnogenol work great for ADD kids. We'll show you a little formula to play your prefrontal cortex. And once you take the tests and you see which lobe you're having the most trouble with, if the prefrontal cortex, write down what you're supposed to do for the day because these people will get all over the map and not stay organized. Try to focus on positive. Negatives like to take over the prefrontal cortex, people. Get organized. Stop the overstimulation. Stop stimulating yourself. Stop yelling. Speak gently. Starve the need for external stimulus. People are addicted to stimulus today. It's driving them nuts. And the more you do it, it feeds itself till you can't do anything because you need to be all stirred up. Classical music helps relax the prefrontal cortex. In the literature, they said this: finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things of good report, if there be any virtue and if there be any praise, think on these things. Prefrontal cortex, people wander. Keep your brain focused. You're all over the map. That was in the literature. If you have an overstimulated frontal cortex with these particular symptoms, I didn't put any doses down because I'm going to leave that to the doctors and the people that actually do this for a living. 4 to 6 of those would have some surprising results quickly for an overstimulated frontal cortex. If understimulated, I would enjoy that cocktail. That cocktail works very good on my frontal cortex to lift my moods up because of the stress and cortisol always pushing my neurotransmitters down. Stress destroys your happiness all the time, everybody. I have rich men come in that they've been through so much stuff they have not a lick of enjoyment left in their retirement. They conquered the world and they're miserable because their brains are dead from stimulation. It's a major problem today. The deep limbic system, clinical depression, moodiness, irritability, negative perception of life's events. I remember kids I grew up with that were just negative all the time. You know, I could only hang out with them so long because it got to be draining on my soul. They're always mad, social isolation, totally different type of brain. For this helps you give emotional spice to your life. The deep limbic system. Moodiness, irritability, negative thinking, negative perception of events. I had friends growing up that if they couldn't say a positive thing, they were stuck. You get stuck on the negatives. This is what it's like to be stuck. You'll isolate yourself, you have negative emotions, and you'll perceive events as negative when they're not even negative because you're stuck. Bonding disruptions, mother-child disruptions will disturb the deep limbic system. Death, divorce, empty nest, depression, manic depression. The deep limbic system is involved with rage, sometimes for no reason whatsoever. A more complicated approach, which you can read at leisure, but I'd like to make it a little more specific. If you're one of these people, before we get to the nutrition, kill the automatic negative thoughts. They're cynical, gloomy, and you can't control them. Start working. Accurate thinking. Shut the radio off. Think accurately. Don't let that weird tape play in your head because it drives you nuts. Try to surround yourself with positive people. Build skills with people. Get some bonding going. You know, the guys in the locker room I've really learned to know over the years, and there's some nice connections there. Thank you. Promote physical contact. Some people live with sterile people and there's no physical contact. Try to give them some physical contact. Have some heart once in a while. Surround yourself with great smells. Get some essential oils going to lift your moods up. Get some wonderful memories and start to exercise. You can't be that negative. The deep limbic system sets the emotional tone of the mind, and it's a filter for life's events. Motivation, highly charged memories, bonding, we talked about that. Now the deep limbic system responds to serotonin, dopamine, protein, St. John's wort. That will lift people's moods up within the week. You need to learn. Now, 35 years ago, I spent a lot of time with a number of naturopaths that trained me how to use amino acids on the brain. It was a fantastic education because it's a game changer. Your brain, your neurotransmitters don't come from fruit, they don't come from vegetables, they don't come from carbs, they come from protein. Protein deficient diets make people miserable. Normal grief. If you had a spouse, an accident, you're perfectly normal and your brain goes down the toilet, so you're thinking yourself crazy, this is a pill that you can use for a couple of months until you stop rehearsing what you can't control. This is a touchdown for people who have had through some horrible event. My highest patient was on 12 Mincheks. I told that story. It got him to put the gun down and go back to life because his brain was torturing himself. Mincheks absolutely will help, but you got to play on the right person. Normal people, they're out of control for a life's event. You can pull them back quickly. 48 hours a lot of times. Cortisol shrinks your brain. Cortisol shrinks your hypothalamus. Zinc and lithium can lower cortisol if you're trapped. There's a lot of ways to push down cortisol. I will share that one with you. If you're stuck, most people are stuck. That can give you a break in the evening if you're trapped. Zinc and lithium lower cortisol. Zinc at lunch, lithium maybe in the evening, and you can have a much easier sleep. Glutamate. Now, Russell Blaylock talked about the MSG thing. I don't really have time to get into that, but if you have a glutamate toxicity, that settles down glutamate for that overstimulated, overexcited brain on certain individuals. That's the MSG thing that Dr. Blaylock talked about. If your brain's crazy and you think too much, you can get yourself in real trouble like this guy. He had busy eyes, his brain spun in circles, he didn't grab a hold of it, and he made a complete fool of himself because his brain did not gain traction when it should have. Look for the eyes. The basal ganglia system. What do we know about this? The basal ganglia system is how your body idles. You have an idling. If it idles too fast, you're going to get anxious. If it idles too low, you have no motivation. It shifts and controls your speed. Anxiety and nervousness, panic attacks, you can get stuck on. Once you get stuck on, it's like, it's funny, I have a man coming in tomorrow. I looked at the schedule. The guy that owns one of the top of the restaurants in downtown, one of the big places. I'm going to go down and have dinner with this guy, me and my wife one day. He's coming in tomorrow. He's on the other side of this kind of success. So watch men that have elevated basal ganglions where their idling speed is set so high from life's journey, then retirement comes. They got tons of money, they got to stop, and they're sitting there basically shaking because they don't know what to do because they've been idling too high for a long, long time. They can't enjoy their retirement and they're stuck. Anxiety, panic, nervousness, workaholics, excessive ambitions right there. Those are people that work themselves to death. Learn to cool that off. If it's too low, they can't get out of bed and they have no motivation. Learn to control your idle. Feelings, thoughts, and movements. Smooth integration of emotions. Overactivity, anxiety, tension, increased awareness, and fear. A lot of people are stuck. I see more people stuck on than stuck off right now with that kind of a thing. Very important. Tics, Tourette's are found there. Fine motor problems are found there. Motivation's there with the dopamine deficient states. Learn to make your dopamine work. Cocaine played dopamine, but it wore you out and it ended up burning you out. Pleasure control loops. Cocaine and Ritalin affect the basal ganglion. Cocaine goes in fast, Ritalin goes in slow. Same pathway. That's interesting, isn't it? How did that happen? Not just a coincidence, probably. Romance loves, the basal ganglion loves romance. How can we increase stimulation in this part of the brain to assist people to let go of their addictive tendencies to promote dopamine in the basal ganglion? There. That works very well for people whose idle is set too high. You want to enjoy life and not be trapped in anxiety. If understimulated, tyrosine, ashwagandha, B6, B1, when you take your test, or if, this is your surprise. Everybody's interested, what can you get into the brain? What actually can you get into the brain? That. Those are things now, here's my B6, here's my oils that I've done forever. I take these pathways very seriously. In my life, I'm always doing something like that. I would be on this, a few of those things, but for other reasons, but I'm keeping my blood-brain barrier healthy, because if your gut's healthy, your blood-brain barrier will be healthy. What do you know about the temporal lobe? I think this is my father. For the temporal lobe today, how many people know somebody with a short fuse? They have rage without reason. They have dark thoughts, panic without reason, misinterpretation of events as negative when they're not. These people can be pretty dark and moody sometimes because simple head injuries can disturb the side of your head. And we get some dark thoughts, we get some violent thoughts, and these people can have aggression, darker violent thoughts like we talked about, reading difficult. They're not the most stable people when the temporal lobe starts to act up. Facial expression, vocal intonation is on one side. On the right, memory, amnesia, anxiety or fear for no particular reason, abnormal sensory perceptions. These people can be kind of angry and have trouble settling their emotions down. I believe this is one of my father's things because I watched a lot of interesting arguments that didn't seem to make a lot of sense, but we seemed to argue about it anyway because he seemed to be one of those raging dudes that kind of tore us all up because he had to get his way because it only had to work that way. Here's some suggestions for that. If you happen to know folks like that, or if you are one, learn to tamp down your temporal lobe. All these things will provide a break to those angry minds. Interesting. And I'll tell you, everybody has to apply something because work, spouse, jobs, try to make yourself function because we're losing ground today. The cingulate system. What do you know about the cingulate system? Not much. Cognitive flexibility. These people are stuck. These people hold grudges forever. They have stuck thinking. They're over-focused. They have rigid behavior. They can't shift gears well. You better mold into their world because they're not going to mold into yours. Ask them to do something, they say no before you do anything. Nope. Very rigid, inflexible people. They're over-focused. They get stuck. They can't get out of their stuff. Hold a grudge on you forever. Learn to relax your brain when it's stuck. You can't get out of it. These people can get themselves in a mess because you have to be flexible today with all the people that you meet today. You can't be stuck in one mode. Worrying. These people are professional worriers. They'll hold on to hurts from the past forever. Cognitive inflexibility. Road rage. Automatic no. That's a whole nother animal to work with. Protein makes everybody better. Tryptophan will improve serotonin, cool their brains off, give them a break, get them unstuck. Things that will help: Minchex, tryptophan. You want to support the endocrine axis. Simple. Men, 3 things in M. Women, F, those 3 things. I would expect your brain to have results within a couple days. It's nice to lift up your moods and have reasonable thought processes. Singlet. Nutrients to combat Alzheimer's. That's the things that work on your brain. I thought I would share that with you because people want to know, what can you get into the brain? Those things. You got a lot of brain things you can work with. And remember, support your doctor is not Amazon. Glutamate. Russell Blaylock talked about the glutamate receptors. Who wants this? The suicide brain is this: decreased prefrontal activity, impulsivity and poor judgment, increased cingulate activity, stuck brain, short fuse with the temporal lobe. They're anxious and moody. That's the typical brain that likes to kill themselves. There's some pineal in that pill. The only pill that we have to help get your pineal gland functioning is that. That and some melatonin. You can start to wake up, decalcifying yourself if you're all frozen, start to bring your brain back to life so that you can learn to read the room better than you're doing. Serotonin and melatonin go together. If you have a serotonin deficiency, you're going to have problems with melatonin. Who are the violent people? Decreased prefrontal activity, trouble thinking clearly. They got stuck on thoughts, short fuse, anxiety, and moodiness. Very similar pattern. When your body's fighting an infection, your dopamine is suppressed so that you can fight your infection. Your motivation can go down when you're fighting an infection because you're suppressed on purpose. The blood-brain barrier is a single layer. Keeping your gut healthy keeps your blood-brain barrier healthy. Very important. I find how simple today. Here's this Dan Patrick guy. Apparently he has a show about something. This is the year 2020. We're quarantined. We're on lockdown from something. Like that was a seasonal thing. Before this year is done, this flu will have less victims than last year's flu. And last year's flu didn't tank the economy. It just was a flu. So this dude, this is the competition today for me and the docs out there. So Dan Patrick has had health problems for a long time. He has polymyalgia rheumatica. So they put him on prednisone. Now it helped him, but depression, personality change, and suicidal thoughts. All right, well that's a start. Then he wanted to stop taking the drugs, so they said, you need some chemo. So they put him on chemo. Then he had daily headaches and memory loss. I would think in 2020, we would be able to do something without killing you in the process. But we're working on that. Maybe 2025 will round that corner, I think. I'm going to share something special with you, for all of you. Now, I have to sleep. Now, we've had trouble with certain things to help people sleep because things that work good, the government takes off. That phenotropic, we lost that. Man, that worked good. So now, I will take that tonight, 2 of those at 9 and 2 of those at 10. I sleep just fine. Now, if I'm tired, if I need help sleeping, I can use that. If I'm tired, I'm not going to do it. I like to sleep on my own if I can. I want to share a special home run with you guys. Now, if you want a home run for your brain, drive your cortisol down, push up your serotonin and your dopamine, and in the evening, take your B6, B1 to raise your GABA. You can start bringing your brain back to life and start to feel actual changes in how you think with something as simple as that. Now, I know after the energy lecture, I wanted to come back with a technical lecture. In August, there's going to be some special surprises, and we're going to take you to a world that people don't understand, because what is the most underutilized therapy? We're going to have lots of examples about that. I expect you to have a lot of fun with that. Now, I know this is up. Thank you. Now, I hope I entertained you before you go back to whatever your show was watching after today. I want to thank my interviewer, the guy that introduced me, Dr. Gill. That was a fantastic introduction. I hope for some fun things in the future. I want all the people to look at our website, follow everything on DHS, because staying healthy now is not as easy as it used to be, and we got some interesting changes coming. Thank all you for watching. I'll see you in August.